Hey, did you know that Neo and Trinity's relationship is core to the story of The Matrix? You did? How? You watched the movies? Yeah, that'll do it. Leave it to CBR to state the obvious. Boy, has this site changed. It used to be a comic book news site. Now it's just a bunch of did you know articles. Basic stuff too. Things any actual fan would already know. It's basically internet filler. Normally, I ignore the articles because they're silly and harmless, but I came across one that was so stupid that I had to pause. I had to marvel. Have you ever marveled? I had to marvel at this article about the Matrix because it was about something so obvious, but the title made it sound like it was a real insight nobody ever thought about in the 30 years since the movie came out. Quote, 22 years later, The Matrix's single most important scene still goes completely over fans' heads. My first thought, this is about the architect scene and Neo choosing Trinity over humanity. And I was right. Quote, when Neo decides not to listen to the architect and leaves his intended purpose behind, even though the architect assures him that he is dooming all of humanity, Neo does it for one reason and one reason alone, to save Trinity's life. What this decision cements is a solidification of one of the central themes of the first movie and lays the foundation for the rest of the franchise's core ethos, that Neo and Trinity's love for one another is the one factor that the machines can never account for, and is the deciding factor that separates them from all of humanity. Right. Okay, what's your name? Alexander. Okay, Alexander. When were you born? I have to ask. It's imperative I ask, because your conclusion only makes sense if you were born in the 21st century, because then you would have been a baby when the movies came out and would have completely missed that everyone talked about the meaning of that scene.
What do you mean everyone?
Everyone!
The entire architect scene was one massive revelation after another. First off, we learned that this was the sixth version of the Matrix, meaning Neo was the sixth version of the One. The first film already stated that there was a One before Neo, but implied that Neo was simply that man reincarnated. The Matrix Reloaded upended that. Neo isn't a reincarnation. He's another iteration. He's a program, an algorithmic anomaly placed inside a human body. Second, we learned why he and the other ones exist, to allow the Matrix to even work. It turns out that humans rejected the false reality of the Matrix, regardless of whether it was a paradise, like the first one, or a hellscape, like the second one, or even a reflection of the human world, like the later versions. As Neo says,
Choice. The problem is choice.
Humans wouldn't accept the programming of the Matrix unless they could choose to accept it. This was discovered by a program created to learn about and understand humans. The program realized that if machines allowed humans to choose to remain in the Matrix, but bury that ability to a subconscious level, most humans would accept the Matrix as reality. The ones who didn't would be allowed to wake up. However, burying that desire for a choice also created the anomaly. Essentially, all that pent-up choice needed to go somewhere, so it got placed into a human body. In short, the One is a personification of choice. This is why Neo rejects concepts like fate. It's literally programmed into him to do that. That leads us to the third revelation we learned. In order to ensure the Ones don't sow chaos and will fulfill the need to reboot the system when too many humans begin to resist the Matrix, they're all programmed with the baseline love of humanity and the desire to sacrifice themselves to save humanity by returning to the source. I remember sitting in the theater in 2003 and people gasping when they heard this. Why? Because it kind of makes it seem like everything Neo did wasn't actually his choice, but instead something he was just programmed to do, in this case to resist and rebel. In short, it was the illusion of choice, something that Counselor Hammond, the Oracle, the Merovingian, and then eventually the Architect all mentioned. However, Neo is an exception. His love isn't just for all humanity, it's for one person, Trinity. The Architect knows enough about humans to know what will come next. Neo will choose Trinity over returning to the source. Now, here's the kicker. We don't know if Neo fell in love with Trinity on his own, or whether he was programmed to do this by the program who discovered the trick with choice, the Oracle. When you think about it, it makes all of her prophecies make sense. Maybe she knew about Trinity saving the One because she either programmed this to happen or she manipulated things for centuries so that it would eventually occur. Maybe that's why they say it was inevitable. It was also inevitable that Neo wouldn't complete his function as the One as long as he was bound to Trinity. This is painfully obvious in the trilogy, especially in Reloaded and Revolutions. His love for Trinity would prevent him from sacrificing himself to save humanity because he'd want to save Trinity first. It's only after she dies that Neo completes his function as the One, although not the way the Architect or the Oracle expected. It was an odd choice for the Wachowskis because throughout the trilogy, there's this Gnostic element in Neo and Trinity's relationship. They're only complete when they're together, which harkens back to the Gnostic concept of dualism, although the Wachowskis take some liberties with that concept. Now, I call this an odd choice because, from a Gnostic perspective, it makes more sense for Neo to need Trinity to complete his function as the One. However, the Wachowskis invert this, so that it's only when Neo is separated from Trinity that he finally accepts his fate. All of this was talked about after the movies came out. In fact, it's all over the behind-the-scenes material. The Wachowskis brought in philosophers to talk about these themes in The Roots of the Matrix, and the philosophers specifically talked about Neo and Trinity's relationship. And that brings me back to this article because I have to ask, what you talking about, Alex? None of this went over fans' heads. Everybody saw it and acknowledged it. They just didn't care as much about the relationship as they did about the action or the broader philosophical themes. But everybody knew about the whole love thing because everybody complained about that clunky scene where the Indian dude talks about karma and love being just the word.
You do not understand.
I just have never.
Heard a program speak of love.
It is a human emotion.
No, it is a word. What matters is the connection the word implies.
So I'll ask again, when were you born? 'Cause if you weren't alive or were a little kid when the movies came out, I'll give you a pass. But if you were a teen or older, come on, man. This would have been one of the most pivotal movies you ever saw. How are you fucking this up? I mean, why would you write something like this? Quote, Neo's decision to save Trinity's life and risk the fate of humanity in the process encapsulates the central theme of the four-film franchise, that the love between the two characters is the most important force in the universe, one that only some machines can comprehend. This theme is prevalent in the first film, when Neo is seemingly killed by the malevolent Agent Smith but returns to life, fully in control of his powers as the One, when Trinity admits that she is in love with him. Neo being revived by Trinity's love is an important and emotionally charged moment, proof that from the beginning, the Wachowski sisters deeply embedded the franchise with a nearly corny emotional core that likens its heightened emotions to anime storytelling. And you think people missed that? Okay. I just gotta ask, are you a machine? Are you one of them? Are you a machine? Are you AI? Because that's the only thing that explains this. Just out of curiosity, I checked and no, he actually went to school. This is a person. He just has no fucking idea what he's talking about. Please tell me if you're part of Gen Z. Because if you're a millennial like me, we're booting you out. I'm sorry, you're done. My generation is not the coolest generation. That's Gen X. But still, you can't be a member and fuck up basic facts about the Matrix that literally everyone has known since the movie came out in '99. You have to go. Next, he gonna be like, did you know that composer Don Davis used music cues reminiscent of the 90s dial-up modem sound? Hell, CBR probably already wrote that article and I just didn't see it. Unfortunately, this is what CBR has become. Gone is anything close to actual news. Now it's just a bunch of AI-looking articles that make those 2010 listicles look like Pulitzer-winning investigative reports. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.